Good morning and welcome to ASL's HR in 10.
At 10.
I'm Jason Perry,
And I'm Kimberly Bradshaw.
and we every week get together and talk about what's going on in the world of employment and HR. I actually wonder, Kimberly, whether or not, in light of yesterday's announcement, we might actually do one of these in the same room soon.
Wow, that would be rather spectacular, really, wouldn't it?
Indeed, it would. So, restrictions, COVID is over. Did I hear
Oh,
that right?
yes. Yes, well, as you know, normally I'm an optimist, but in this situation, I'm a pessimist. And I think ending restrictions is it's a great message for the country. However, I'm worried that it's too much too soon.
Okay. You think we're doing it a little bit, well, I say we, you think the government are pushing it a
Yeah.
little bit too fast. Okay. So what happens next week? Let's just do a recap on this. As I understand it, all restrictions end pretty much next week, with the only exception being self-isolation.
Yes, although there's word that that might end as well. Clearly the government's view is we're going for herd immunity. Uh, but I think one of the reasons I'm very sceptical about it is one of my cousin's children has had COVID twice now
Mm.
in 3 months.
Yeah. Well, I know, I think Keir Starmer demonstrated that you could get it again quite quickly because he had it in October and in January. So, yes, we're seeing that change. The big change seems to be that if you get COVID now with Omicron, you don't get very ill. Um,
Yeah.
and if you like, the bet is that Omicron is now as bad as it gets and we improve from here. And if that gamble is right, then this is probably okay.
Yes,
It,
I think the change. One of the changes is obviously the scrapping the work from home guidance,
yes.
and that's great for everybody that wanted to be in the office. I worry about some of those bosses who don't believe that people working from home are working from home and
Mm.
want everybody back in. And I my advice to any employer at the moment would be just take it cautiously. Don't get everybody back all in one go.
Small
Brace yourself in
steps.
case there's another thing, another wave of something
Mm.
coming, and be prepared to go back just in
Yeah.
case. So
Yeah.
there's always a plan B.
Well, I'm going to throw your favourite phrase into there. I think it's about employee engagement. And what
Yeah.
you need to do is talk to your people, find out how they're feeling. Because, as you say, some of them will be feeling nervous. And it's a
Yes.
question of pitching that at the right level.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep them on side. An organisation is only as effective as its people. So
Yeah.
we need to keep them comfortable with the changes we're putting in. So by all means, bring people back into work, but you still need to run COVID risk assessments. What
Exactly.
what you don't want is to find that suddenly COVID rips through your organisation, and next week half of your people are isolating and can't work, and therefore you're an ineffective business. So I think there's some simple steps to take. But
Yes.
probably the right route is really through, shall we say, baby steps, small changes, review them, see the impact, and hopefully we're doing this with falling case numbers because the numbers are dropping rapidly, aren't they?
They are. I mean, my local area, we reached our peak a couple of days ago, but the last 3 days we've been coming down each day, which is
Yes.
great. Uh, there was a tribunal finding a couple of weeks back, and I can't remember it exactly, but it was just speaking to what you said about employee engagement. I think there was a lady that complained that she didn't want to come into work because she was
Mm.
concerned, and I think the ruling went against her.
Yes, it
So
did.
it's so important to get people on board. I think another concern for employers around all of this is that they might now have to pay for tests. The testing centres are going to close.
Mm.
So what's going to happen going forwards? Do we all need to stock up while we can?
Yeah, I think it's about planning and being prepared for what's coming. And as you say, at the moment, the simple changes this week, or more to the point, next week, are the advice is return to a normal work environment. The advice from the government was consult your employer, contact your employer and ask for advice about how you safely return. So I think there needs to be a gradual and phased return. Face masks are no longer mandatory as from next week. And but you may, as an employer, want to do a risk assessment and say, well, in our environment, we still think it would be wise for people to wear that if it makes them feel more comfortable. So I think that there's a kind of gradual steps as we move down this road. But we think that the isolation may disappear by law within 2-3 months, maybe.
Yes.
And the intention then is we treat having COVID as you would treat having flu or some other virus that you wouldn't want spreading around your workplace. Now, most years we manage those things without having mass outbreaks.
Yes, I think you're right there. And one thing you touched on, which has struck a chord with me, is the face mask issue. And I think that's another. It could be almost inclusion as well as employee engagement, because there will be some people that still want to wear masks for their own protection, and all employers need to make it clear that it's okay whatever you choose, and people should not be blamed, belittled or whatever for whatever their choice is, with or without masks.
No, totally. And the environment should be non-judgmental in that way to help your people feel comfortable with the approach you and they choose together. One of the other really important things, and we've talked about this so much over the past couple of years, is the hybrid workplace. And I don't think that people want to return to a full-on work environment. And therefore, you've got to kind of plan this, how you return, but you also need to plan what the new world's going to look like.
Yes, I wonder whether quite a few employers have already got this in place because they've been working with a hybrid model and assuming it's been successful for them. Why would they change? If they need less office space, it's a cost saving. It just depends on the line management style and approach, and whether it's more enlightened line managers who can cope with assessing in different ways. Sorry, my cat's just appeared there. Or whether it's somebody that if you're not at your seat, you're not working.
Yes, yeah, indeed. While we're talking about employee engagement and the importance of getting them on side, before we run out of time today, I think we should just touch on how you record vaccine status, if you want to, of your workers, or whether you should.
Yeah, or whether you do, or whether you know whether you do.
You've been reading that piece of research.
For that now, aren't I? So it was a people management survey, wasn't it? So we found that 33% of employers are recording vaccine status. 9% are considering recording it, 48% don't record it, and 10% don't know whether they record it or not.
Yes.
And that really made me chuckle. How can you not know?
Well, I kind of thought that was a bit like 10% didn't know whether they'd been to a party or not.
What was actually a work event.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Meeting.
Now, bear in mind, this was HR people, and if anyone's going to know whether you're recording it, you'd like to think it's going to be HR people. Now, what I found fascinating is we in our HR forum yesterday actually talked about this in, I'm going to say, in a statistically significant group of people to identify 33%, and no one was recording it. So, I know there are one or two employers, we know them like IKEA, I think it is, who have decided they're not going to pay sick pay to people who have chosen not to have a vaccine. But I'm wondering what other basis there is for asking people formally what their vaccine status is, and if that's even an acceptable reason.
Exactly. I mean, it can only be philosophical beliefs, potentially. However, as we were talking about earlier, my concern is the potential for discrimination issues here for employers if they're asking. I think also, we're going back to our favourite employee engagement. We know one organisation that was at the forum yesterday who they know whether their employees are vaccinated because their employees tell them, because they're pleased to say, I'm safer than other people.
But they know that informally, they don't record it. Yes, and they don't use it. Now, what strikes me is there are some employers, for example, that don't pay sick pay if somebody has injured themselves in an adventure sport. Let's say they do base jumping in their spare time. And they say if you...
My favourite.
Absolutely. I'm trying to pick something suitably exciting there. And if you break a limb in an adventure sport, you won't get full pay. You'll only get statutory sick pay. Now, that kind of seems okay to me, but do you record in advance what adventure sports your people do? I doubt you do. I suspect what you do is when somebody goes sick, you ask them what their injury is, and then you say, and did you have a vaccine? And I think it's probably easier that way, and I can't yet see a clean way to collect this data and use it that's going to be GDPR compliant.
Yeah, I think that is an issue. And while you were talking, what was just going through my head is, some contracts have restrictions in them where you may not put yourself at risk whilst you are employed by this organisation. I wonder whether they'll rely on clauses like that going forward.
Now, there's one where we need a lawyer to comment on, I feel.
Exactly.
It's, or a tribunal to test it, one or the other. Kimberly, as ever, HR in 10, you and I could talk for hours, but we've just overrun our time. So
again,
for this week, we shall draw it to a close. But we will see you all again, same time next week for more HR discussions.